What happens when one of Britain's most revered comedic minds sits down with a late-night host who's forgotten the line between charm and condescension? Tonight we unpack the explosive moment Rowan Atkinson walked off The Late Show, leaving Stephen Colbert visibly rattled and his audience stunned. What should have been a light-hearted chat quickly spiraled into one of the most uncomfortable breakdowns in late-night history, an interview masterclass in what not to do. But before we break it all down, hit subscribe and let us know in the comments. When do celebrity interviews cross the line? Backstage, the usual pre-show buzz filled the green room. Rowan Atkinson, ever the professional, sat quietly in a corner, reviewing talking points for what he assumed would be a straightforward interview about his latest project. Polished, measured, respectful. That's what he was told to expect. He had no idea he was walking into a trap. "Mr. Atkinson, we're ready for you," a stage manager called. Rowan straightened his tie, took a breath, and followed her through a maze of cables toward the stage. The audience was still riding high off Colbert's opening monologue when the host greeted him with his trademark grin. "Rowan, welcome to the show, mate. Ready to have some fun tonight?" "Certainly," Atkinson replied with characteristic restraint, shaking Colbert's hand. But there was a glint in the host's eyes, something sharp, almost performative, that set Rowan on edge. The first few moments went smoothly enough. Colbert introduced his guest with flair, listing Atkinson's iconic roles and career milestones. The applause was enthusiastic as Rowan took his seat, posture perfect, hands neatly folded. Then came the turn. "So," Colbert began smirking, "let's talk about your new project. But first, I gotta ask, don't you ever get tired of people expecting you to be funny all the time? I mean, you're sitting there looking so serious. I keep waiting for you to fall out of your chair or make a face." The comment lingered awkwardly. Rowan's brow lifted slightly, subtle but telling. "Well, Stephen," he replied evenly, "I think there's a common misconception that comedians are always on. In truth, we're just people with a particular craft." Sure. Colbert nodded, clearly uninterested in the nuance. "But come on, give us a little something. The audience is dying here. Maybe just a tiny bean expression." Rowan's smile thinned. "I'd prefer to discuss the work rather than perform on cue, if that's all right." Colbert chuckled, turning to the camera. "Oh boy, he's being all serious and British on us." A few scattered laughs. "Look, I get it. You're an artist and all," he continued. "But this is late night. People want to laugh, not get a TED Talk about your process." The mood shifted. The crowd felt it too. Banter had curdled into mockery. Rowan's jaw tensed, a barely perceptible signal. But for those who knew him, it was a storm warning. "I believe," Rowan said calmly, "that comedy, like any art form, deserves respect, and I'd argue the audience is intelligent enough to appreciate that." Colbert rolled his eyes. "Oh, here we go. The audience deserves more credit." He leaned in. "Buddy, I've been doing this for years. I know what people want, and right now, they want the guy who made them laugh, not some pompous lecture about rubber faces and craft." The word pompous hit like a slap. The room went still. Rowan's eyes narrowed, his voice quiet, but cutting. "I beg your pardon? Did you just call me pompous for refusing to perform like a trained monkey?" "Hey, whoa, no need to get defensive," Colbert said, raising his hands in mock surrender. "I'm just saying, you're on a comedy show. Maybe try being a little funny. This isn't the Oxford Union." The dig at Rowan's Oxford education wasn't lost on him, or anyone in the room. He stared at Colbert for a long moment, When he spoke again, his tone was razor-sharp. You invited me here to discuss my work. What you've done instead is attempt to reduce my career to a party trick because you think it'll get a few cheap laughs. The audience was dead silent now. I don't owe you a performance, Stephen. And frankly, if this is what passes for conversation on your show, I've no interest in continuing it. He stood up, calmly, deliberately. Thank you, he said to the audience. You deserved better than this. And just like that, Rowan Atkinson walked off set. The crowd hesitated, then erupted in applause, not for Colbert, but for the man who chose dignity over disrespect. As Colbert sat behind his desk, visibly shaken, the next segments limped forward. But the damage was done. The moment was already viral. But those who knew Rowan could see it, the storm quietly gathering behind his eyes. You know what, Stephen? He said slowly and deliberately. His voice adopted the crisp, deliberate enunciation familiar to anyone who'd seen his dramatic work. I've appeared on talk shows across the globe, from the BBC to Japanese television, and I have never, not once, encountered such unprofessional behavior from a host. Colbert scoffed, a nervous chuckle escaping. Unprofessional? I'm giving you a platform to promote your work, and you're sitting there like you're doing me a favor. This isn't the Royal Command performance. It's late-night TV. The reference to the Royal Command performance wasn't accidental. It was a pointed jab at Atkinson's ties to British cultural prestige, a deliberate provocation. The studio audience, sensing the moment had shifted from awkward to serious, fell utterly silent. Rowan uncrossed his legs and leaned forward, his movements calm, precise, and composed. Let me be very clear, Stephen, he began, voice low but firm. I came here tonight as a professional courtesy to discuss a project I care deeply about. I did not come here to be insulted or to perform tricks for your amusement. Insulted? Colbert repeated, his tone rising. His grip on the conversation was clearly slipping. How exactly have I insulted you? By asking you to do what you're famous for. I'm trying to entertain my audience. You've been condescending from the moment I sat down, Rowan replied, his accent sharpening with every syllable. Your entire approach has been to trivialize my work, to reduce a decades-long career to rubber faces and pratfalls, to treat me like a sideshow act. The tension in the room was now electric. Camera operators, who usually moved with relaxed confidence, stood still, their lenses capturing every moment with surgical precision. In the control room, producers were no doubt panicking, whispering urgently into headsets, trying to decide how, or if, they could still salvage the segment. Colbert, sensing he had perhaps gone too far, tried to soften. Okay, maybe we got off on the wrong foot. I didn't mean— No, Rowan said, cutting him off. A rare breach of decorum for the famously reserved performer. You meant exactly what you said. You've made your perspective perfectly clear. You regard comedy as something base, something unworthy of thoughtful conversation or respect. That's not fair, Colbert began. It's not only fair, it's accurate, Rowan countered. Every one of your questions has been designed to belittle not just me, but the very art of comedy itself. You seem to believe that because something is funny, it cannot also be intelligent. That laughter disqualifies it from being respected. The words hung in the air like thick smoke. Colbert's polished TV smile had all but vanished, replaced by a taut, uneasy expression. His veneer of control was cracking under the weight of Rowan's quiet, devastating critique. I think you're being a bit dramatic here, Colbert said, trying to regain his footing. This is supposed to be fun. Remember fun? He said the word like a reprimand, as though speaking to a sulking child who'd forgotten how to play. Rowan, gaze narrowed. That one word, fun, seemed to crystallize everything that had gone wrong. Fun, Rowan repeated slowly, the word sounding bitter in his mouth. Is that what you call this? Mocking a guest's intelligence? Demanding they perform on command? Dismissing a life's work as mere silliness? That's your idea of fun? Colbert's smile became painfully tight. He was losing the room, and he knew it. Come on, Rowan. You're taking this way too seriously. We're just having a conversation. Here. No, Stephen, Rowan said, his voice rising just enough to carry weight. We're not having a conversation. A conversation requires mutual respect, something you've proven yourself incapable of offering. What we're having is you attempting to humiliate me in front of your audience for cheap laughs. Silence fell across the studio like a curtain. Even the cameramen were frozen, unsure whether to keep filming or look away. In the control room, producers were frantically gesturing, speaking urgently into earpieces, scrambling to figure out how to contain what had become a full-blown late-night disaster. I think you're really overreacting here, Colbert muttered, visibly rattled. But it was too late. The damage had already been done, and millions were about to see it. Colbert tried to steady his voice, but the earlier confidence was gone. This is how talk shows work, he said, the edge of defensiveness creeping in. There's give and take, there's banter. Maybe British television is different, but this is America. We do things differently here. The geographic and cultural condescension landed like a slap. Rowan's expression stiffened. When he spoke, his voice was cold, composed, and carried the weight of genuine offense. So now you're implying that being deliberately rude to your guests is some kind of American tradition? That professionalism is somehow a British quirk? His accent grew more precise, clipped, each syllable struck with surgical intent. How fascinating! Please, enlighten me about this distinctly American brand of hospitality. Colbert shifted, in his seat, visibly uncomfortable with the direction things had taken. That's not what I meant, and you know it. You're twisting my words. Am I? Rowan tilted his head, eyes narrowed. Let me see if I've understood your position. You invited me here under the pretense of discussing my work. Instead, you mocked it. You demanded I perform like some novelty act, then called me pompous when I refused. You reduced my career to a collection of silly faces, then accused me of being too serious when I objected. And now you justify it all by pointing out that we're in America, as if that excuses anything. Tell me, Stephen, have I mischaracterized a single detail? His delivery was calm, but the precision of it left no room for rebuttal. It wasn't a tirade. It was a dissection. Colbert swallowed hard. You're putting words in my mouth. I never said those things. Not exactly. Then by all means, clarify, Rowan replied smoothly, reclining slightly in his chair. Because from where I sit, it seems abundantly clear that you see comedy, and those who practice it seriously, as somehow lesser, as inferior to whatever it is you believe you're doing here. Colbert's face reddened. What I do here, he said stiffly, is entertain millions of people every night. I connect with real Americans, not just some elite audience who laughs at your highbrow British humor. The class resentment was obvious now, barely veiled and bitter. It wasn't just disrespect. It was a calculated attempt to cast Rowan as an elitist outsider. Ah. Rowan said, his smile thin and humorless. Now we get to the root of it. This isn't really about comedy, is it, Stephen? This is about your own cultural insecurities. You've decided that because I'm British and educated, I must represent everything you resent. Intellect, nuance, restraint. That's ridiculous, Colbert snapped. But there was no force behind it. Is it? Rowan pressed. Because everything you've said tonight suggests you believe that intelligence and entertainment are mutually exclusive. That comedy must be shallow to be effective. That if something makes people laugh, it can't possibly make them think. That's not just incorrect, Stephen. It's insulting. To me, yes. But more importantly, to your own audience. That hit the mark. Several audience members began nodding subtly, the shift in sentiment almost visible. They were beginning to realize this wasn't just about one guest. It was about how they were being talked down to. Don't lecture me about my audience, Colbert shot back, louder now, his composure beginning to fray. I know my audience better than you ever will. Do you? Rowan asked quietly. Because your behavior tonight suggests you think they can't handle anything more sophisticated than playground antics. You're treating them like children who can only laugh if someone is being mocked or bullied. The word hung in the air like smoke. It was sharp, deliberate, and everyone knew it was accurate. I am not a bully, Colbert said after a beat, but even he didn't seem convinced. Then what would you call the last 10 minutes? Rowan asked, voice still calm but now tinged with unmistakable condemnation. You've been provocative, dismissive, insulting. You've tried to embarrass me for sport. If that's not bullying, what is it? Colbert looked around as if searching for support from the audience, from his crew, but was met only with awkward silence and downcast expressions. His own team looked embarrassed. The audience was clearly aligned with Atkinson now. I was just trying to have fun, Colbert said weakly. At whose expense? Rowan asked without missing a beat. Fun for whom exactly? I can assure you this hasn't been enjoyable for me, Rowan said evenly, his gaze unflinching. And judging by the silence in this room, your audience doesn't seem to be enjoying it either. The words landed like a hammer. The studio, audience, once buzzing with anticipation to see two beloved entertainers, now sat frozen in awkward stillness. Whatever excitement they had felt had long dissolved into discomfort. Colbert shifted in his seat, his comedic persona faltering. Maybe we should take a break, he offered, glancing nervously toward the control booth. Oh no, Rowan said sharply, his voice firm but controlled. You wanted to have this conversation in front of your audience. So let's have it. You've spent the evening trying to make me look foolish. Surely then you can handle a few questions about your own behavior. The tone had flipped. Without raising his voice or breaking a sweat, Rowan had assumed control of the conversation. Colbert, usually the one steering the show, now squirmed like a guest caught off guard. What questions? Colbert asked, trying to mask his unease. Let's start simple, Rowan said, tilting his head. Do you prepare for these interviews? Colbert hesitated. Of course I do. Then your conduct tonight was intentional, Rowan concluded coldly. You made a deliberate choice to be disrespectful toward a guest who came here in good faith. An interesting approach for someone who claims to value wit and hospitality. Colbert opened his mouth, then closed it again. No rebuttal came. The audience watched as he faltered, trapped by his own admission. Rowan leaned forward, his voice calm but piercing. So which is it? Were you being cruel on purpose? Or are you just incompetent? The silence that followed was suffocating. Finally, Colbert muttered, "That's not fair. You're mischaracterizing what happened." "Am I?" Rowan's tone softened slightly, which only sharpened the blade. "Tell me, Stephen, when preparing for tonight, did you bother to research me at all?" "Yes, I did." "Then you knew I hold a master's degree in electrical engineering from Oxford. You knew I've studied comedy academically, written about it extensively, and performed professionally for over 40 years. You knew all this, and still chose to treat me like a novelty act," the crowd murmured. Many were learning for the first time just how accomplished Rowan truly was, and how thoroughly Colbert had misread his guest. "I didn't mean to, please," Rowan cut in. "Don't insult my intelligence by pretending this was accidental. Everything you've said tonight has been calculated to diminish me. The only question is why." Colbert looked visibly shaken. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No, Stephen, there hasn't." Rowan's tone was icy calm. "You wanted to reduce me to a caricature. But I'm not Mr. Bean. I'm an educated man, with decades of experience in my craft, and I do not appreciate being treated like a performing monkey." A few audience members nodded. The mood had fully shifted. Colbert searched the crowd for sympathy. He found none. "Maybe we should start over?" he offered weakly. Rowan raised an eyebrow. "Stephen, you can't unring a bell. Tonight you've shown everyone exactly who you are, and how little respect you have for your guests." "I'm not a bad person," Colbert said, his voice tinged with genuine vulnerability. Rowan regarded him for a long moment. "I never said you were. But you have behaved badly. And what's worse, you don't seem to understand why." "I was just trying to do my job." "No, your job is to welcome your guests and help them share their stories. What you've been doing is performing some kind of dominance display, trying to assert superiority over someone who came here in good faith. That's not true. Then explain why every question has been a veiled insult. Why you've dismissed my work and demanded I do the voice, like some trained seal." Colbert had no answer. "I think you're overthinking this," he offered, feebly. Rowan's laugh was quiet, incredulous. "Stephen, I'm a guest. The least I should expect is basic courtesy." A heavy silence fell. Then Rowan stood slowly, deliberately. His composure made the moment all the more powerful. "This has been quite educational," he said, unhooking his microphone. "I've learned some hosts believe cruelty is clever, and mockery passes for wit." "Rowan, please don't do this," Colbert said, nearly pleading. "Why should I stay?" Rowan asked. "You've insulted me, dismissed my work, and treated me like a punchline. And for what?" "Because we're not finished," Colbert said desperately. "Oh, but we are," Rowan replied, lifting the mic from his lapel. "I've been in this business too long to not recognize when someone's trying to make me look foolish, and I'm too old to be polite to people who don't deserve it." He stood tall. "I came here expecting a thoughtful conversation. Instead, I found a bully, playing dress-up as a comedian. Pop." The microphone came free. "I don't need your show. I don't need your approval. What I do need is my self-respect." Colbert sat frozen as his show unraveled in front of him. "The cameras are still rolling," he said weakly. "Good." Rowan adjusted his jacket. "Then everyone can see exactly what happened here tonight." He turned to the stunned audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry you had to witness this. You deserve better." With that, Rowan Atkinson walked off the set leaving Stephen Colbert alone beneath the blinding studio lights, his show, and his credibility, in tatters. And just like that, television history had been made. Rowan didn't storm off in anger. He walked away with dignity, having dismantled not just a performance, but an entire persona.